On the line right now is Dr. Peter Morici from the University of Maryland. He's, of course, a well-respected economist. And I wanted to start out, if I could, Dr. Morici, with talking about the thing that's going to happen later today. The president is going to state the very obvious, that the rollout of the Obamacare website is not quite meeting expectations, and he finds that the failures are unacceptable. Based on what you have read, based on what you know, and been some estimates that they may have spent as much as $634 million to develop the website, can you imagine how this thing could be fixed in short order?
No, I can't. Governments can't create a market. Only God can do that. The Soviets tried for 50 years. By the way, the Soviets had very bright engineers and very fine economists, I learned after it was over. The Eastern Bloc economists were very, very good at the game. But it's simply too complex to imitate human behavior. This is like trying to create a whole human being out of nothing.
And so how does this thing get resolved in your mind?
Well, it doesn't get resolved. Over time, we will develop healthcare exchanges that work acceptably well in the mind of a liberal, just like the post office works acceptably well. But all along we're saying, do you want the post office administering your health care? And, the Obama administration pushed through this law, and now we're going to get health care administered by the post office. Think about those long lines at noon, okay, at the post office.
Right.
That's going to be what insurance exchanges are like going forward. Think of all the prices in the 3,000 counties that these exchanges are operating. It's just too much for one entity to conceive of and do. This is why they had shortages in the Soviet Union and so forth. They basically tried to create markets out of whole cloth. The results of markets out of whole cloth, and it was too complex. Eventually, they'll get this thing fixed to the point where you can get insurance that way. But it's always going to be very laborious. And the real problem is if something goes wrong, and you get a bill for $3,000 or $5,000 from the IRS for not having health insurance, you can't really take the IRS to court like you could have. You can't refuse to pay and then take them to court like a private entity.
Right.
It's just not the same thing. Sadly, the government workers are back to work, but so is the IRS. Think about those arbitrary people administering those penalties against the backdrop of this exchange.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
Dr. Morici, Dan Bongino here. Thanks for joining us. So earning reports due out this week. Stock market seems to be rolling now. This question is for the audience, but for me as well. I have to tell you, I'm a little worried here. Is this? Let's say that these earnings reports come out and we start reaching new highs every day. We keep climbing. It seems. Is this a false positive? Is this just a result of Fed QE and Fed printing, or is this really a sustained economic recovery we can rely on? People are worried about this.
It's a sustained economic recovery. It's just a tepid one. By the way, it's no worse than the Bush recovery. You have to go back to the Clinton and Reagan years to have good economic recoveries. This recovery is real. During the Bush years, the stock market really didn't make a lot of progress net. It went up and then it came down during the crisis. My feeling is what's going on is making it more difficult for Janet Yellen to back off of quantitative easing, because she's already been told, if interest rates go up when you back off, finally, that you're creating a lot of problems for countries around the world, places like Italy, Greece, and developing countries, which rely on low interest rates for their big budget deficits. We're not quite there yet with our deficits and debt. To rely on them. But now the stock market relies on them. So now she'll be faced with, if I ease back, I'm going to crash the stock market. Given her predilections towards, metal to the pedal and all that, that means we're probably headed more for inflation, because eventually all that money will cause inflation. We're headed for more inflation if we want to sustain these stock market prices. And that's going to hurt the little guy a lot.
All right, J.P. Morgan has apparently reached a $13 billion settlement with the Justice Department. What's this all about?
Retribution for the 2012 election. Wall Street heavily supported Mr. Obama in 2008 and backed away in 2012. Jamie Dimon has been a very strong critic of Dodd-Frank, and he is now being fined a year's profits, $13 billion, for mortgage-backed securities, basically, mostly, issued by Bear Stearns and Washington Mutual, firms he acquired around 2008 during the crisis. The bank was strongly encouraged by the federal government to acquire those firms and do so quickly to help mitigate the crisis. So it was doing this at Washington's behest. So think about it. This is like the government, somebody drowned in a swimming pool. Then the government is pressuring you to buy that swimming pool for some social reason. So you buy it. Then it turns around and holds you responsible for the drowning. But who drowned there? Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac for buying mortgage-backed securities, basically on liar loans and low-income loans and so forth, that it had a policy of buying so as to foster its social goals. So it was helping the federal government with its social policies, its banking policies, and so forth, trying to be a good citizen. But basically, they're being thrown to the wolves. What really disturbs me is criminal prosecution is to follow. I don't really care if they throw in jail a few executives who were at Bear Stearns at the time and responsible for these bonds, but the taint that it's putting on J.P. Morgan hurts the country. It's a very important bank to the country. A lot of big American companies rely on those banks.
Hold on a minute. Are you suggesting, I can't believe that you would honestly suggest that the Obama Justice Department is being used as a political tool?
Eric Holder's a political hack.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at Texas. He doesn't like what the Supreme. When the Supreme Court says something is legal, it becomes you should do it. As in the the health care mandate. It said it was legal. It didn't say you should do it. It just said the Congress could do it. And now it says the voting aspect of the Voting Rights Act are illegal or unconstitutional. So what it was trying to do is write new law down in Texas. Why? Texas is the target of Democratic organizers. They know that if they can organize Texas and get it in their column, the Republicans won't win a presidential election for 25 to 50 years. No, Eric Holder's a cheap political hack. The fact that criminal prosecution wasn't thrown in on this deal, and look what's going to happen with the money. The government is going to be free to distribute that money, quote, to consumers that took losses. They won't be able to find them all, so it'll go to nonprofits. Now, who will those nonprofits be? Likely left-wing organizations that will campaign for Democrats in swing districts in 2014. So basically, J.P. Morgan is being compelled to give money to the mob who's saying it wants heads on spears.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Dr. Peter Morici, not pulling any punches on this Monday morning. We appreciate it.
Take care.